Let me say good morning to everyone.
Good morning.
While we had a very sad event on early this morning in Baltimore, and we're praying for the family, Congressman, I just want you to know that. Aid to you for 11 years, the mother of the children and of the family. Our prayers are there, and you know that. And we're doing everything we can as it relates to that situation. But let me just say, for Baltimore, in many ways, this is a great day. This was a process that people did not think that we would get through in time. I had an interesting conversation very early with our Attorney General, who visited us a couple of weeks ago, and praised our negotiating team. And I said to her then that we would get the work done, that we were committed to getting the work done. And I think most of you know that I've been on the job now, is it 33 days? I'm not quite sure, 32, 33, because I know the media celebrated my 1 month anniversary just a few days ago. But this has been a very, very, very focused process. And I can tell you, because I sat in on negotiations, I participated in phone calls and conference meetings, and I said to my city solicitor that one morning we were at 1 o'clock, and he said to me, I'll get right back to you, as we were negotiating. And so 1:30 I called him. He said, what are you doing still up? I said, because I'm waiting on you. And Attorney General Lynch, your team, your Deputy Attorney General, Vanita Gupta, have worked diligently with us. I also want to take a moment and thank my Board of Estimates, because they too worked hard, and we had a hearing this morning, and they participated. We heard a little from the public, and I had to explain to the public that this part of the process is when the DOJ, the police department, and the mayor's office team negotiate, and that is behind closed doors. But what happened prior to that was that we had hearings all across the city. We heard from various groups and organizations, and for that, we are grateful. And so it was those conversations that took place that allowed us to create the document that was just filed, I understand. And so the process will begin. There are about 15 different specific areas that the community asked us to address. But I also, before I get started on that, I want to thank the community. I want to thank the activists. I want to thank the community members, the folks who have specific concerns. We heard those concerns and we included them in this document. And I want to say that the agreement recognizes that the city's Baltimore Police Department has begun some critical reform. However, there is much more to be done. We know that the Freddie Gray situation also perpetuated this coming together of all three agencies. And we also recognize that, we are in the early stages of this. Once the document is formed and filed, as it has been, we know that the process begins with also that being accepted, as well as community input. And we want to hear from the community. The agreement is also designed to increase transparency, public input, oversight, accountability. It imposes discipline and fair treatment. And as I tell folks, we hire our police department to protect and serve our citizens. We know that many of them put their lives on the line, but it's important that every aspect, every individual, every person, regardless of what you think about them, what you thought they might have been doing, everybody deserves respect. And we want the citizens of Baltimore to be treated as such. On my first day in office, I stated that I wanted to get this done quickly. That for me, this was not about cost. This was about fairness and understanding where we are, and more importantly, where we must go. I am committed to engage in the public input at each stage of this process. We will hire a monitor. And what we've said is that we also want to hear from the community as it relates to that. There are about 15 different reforms in this particular document. We set up a community oversight task force. I think this is important because that task force will have the responsibility of not just looking at where we are, but helping us to continue to move in the direction of community input, engagement, and getting our police department to engage. Just the other day, and I said this earlier at the Baltimore, at the Board of Estimates, that I witnessed a program that I want to expand and increase, and that is mediation between police officers and the community. Just yesterday, I met a group, and they said that with the funding through the ABLE Foundation, they were able to engage 500 police officers and young people across the city. And when they walked into the room, police officers on this side, students on this side. By the time they ended, they were sitting together, understanding each other's role. And that's important. I witnessed, well, I didn't witness it, but the police commissioner told me that they engaged in a football game with young people in the community. They lost. But at the same time, what we ended up was with an individual who now wants to be a Baltimore City police officer. And it is important that we get individuals in our city because we, in this document, includes recruitment, retention. What is it that we must do to make sure that we're retaining police officers, that we're recruiting individuals who live in our city? Because when you live in our city, you're committed to our city. And so I'm recruiting police officers. I recruited one of my neighbors who is now going to go into the academy. I recruited a young man who told me that his greatest dream was to be a police officer here in Baltimore. And so he's in the academy, almost ready to come out. Am I correct, Commissioner? Building on improved policies regarding officers' use of force, reporting it, investigating it. These remain priorities of this administration and is a part of this document. Baltimore Police will be requiring officers to use de-escalation techniques whenever possible before resorting to force to reduce the need for force. I heard earlier today at the Board of Estimates meeting the concerns for individuals who are sexually assaulted, how they are being treated. This document includes information and proper training of police officers so they understand these individuals' problems and that they deal with them fairly, and that will be done. I also heard at the Board of Estimates from a young lady who always advocates on behalf of the homeless, wanting to make sure that we're taking care of the homeless in their proper way, because there, by the grace of God, it could be any of us. And so that is a responsibility of our police department. Training, 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 training. And we've begun some training, am I correct? And I think I heard the police commissioner say that he's going to require at least 40 hours, is that what it is? 80 hours. 80 hours of training for our police officers. Because there are different areas that we have to be concerned with. This is a very diverse city. Whether you're gay, straight, bisexual, transgender, it does not matter. Everybody deserves respect, and we want to make sure that that is in place. Regarding how we transport those who we take into custody, we now require cameras in those vans. We want to make sure that individuals are transported singularly and that they're strapped into those vans correctly, and that people aren't harmed in that process. We want to make sure that we protect First Amendment rights of every individual, and we will do that. That will become a part of the training. We're also very concerned, and I've mentioned it time and time again, about the Civilian Review Board. How do we make sure that they have the powers that they need in order to be a part of the community? We want that. We need that. Community engagement is important. Police officers work for the citizens of Baltimore. And so citizens deserve to be engaged in this process. and we will make sure. What we also want is the best technology possible, the latest technology that is available for our police officers, so that we can make sure that we know where they are, how they're treating our citizens, and how we are recording their actions when you are approaching a citizen. You know, all of that will be included in our training. I believe that this document represents the citizens of Baltimore well. If I didn't, I wouldn't be standing here. I appreciate the negotiating team, and I cannot tell you how appreciative I am of the police department, your team, Ganesha. I cannot say enough about our city solicitor, David Ralph, and all of the work that they've done. And I just want to say, Attorney General, we found your team just to be awesome in terms of working with. Benita, I got to know, I feel like my sister, you know, who just wanted to make sure not only that we got it done, but that we got it done right. I walked in on one meeting with the team, all three teams, and I said, look, we can get there. I know we can get there. And one of the gentlemen in the room says, we all want to get there. I remember those remarks. Thank you. We got there. So the work begins. The process begins. And after the courts, we want to hear from you. This agreement becomes a great agreement when we have community input. All of the meetings that have taken place, and I can tell you, I was campaigning through this process, and I had groups saying, you know, we need you to do this, you know, and I thank them. I thank all of them for encouraging me, for pushing me, for supporting me, and what I want you to know that is that I support you. And again, I want to say thank you, and now I'll turn this over to our Attorney General.
Well, thank you so much, Madam Mayor. First of all, I want to thank you for welcoming me to Baltimore today. And let me also thank you for the work that you and your team have done to make this agreement a reality. I also want to thank Commissioner Kevin Davis. The cooperation and dedication and commitment to reform that we've received from you, the police department, and your team has been outstanding and has resulted in an agreement that will work to the benefit of everyone who lives and loves this great city. Let me also thank the members of my team, Vanita Gupta, my outstanding leader of the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division, and our team, who worked so tirelessly also in bringing about today's agreement. 21 months ago, I took the oath of office as Attorney General of the United States, and it was the same day that Mr. Freddie Gray was funeralized here in Baltimore. And that was a difficult day for this city. It was a difficult day for all of us who focus on these important issues of police and community relations. And certainly it was a difficult day for people who knew him and his family. And the city had already endured weeks of tension and protest, and the feelings of mistrust and suspicion unfortunately boiled over into violence that evening. And several days later, my first trip as Attorney General was here. It was to Baltimore. I met with law enforcement leaders. I met with law enforcement officers. I met with civic, religious, and community leaders of this city. I met with your outstanding young people of this city. I met some of the most dedicated, committed professionals in all of those areas that I've had the privilege of seeing. And in every meeting I attended, with every group, with all the discussion of concern and issues and tension, there was one message that every group relayed to me. One thing that they all said, and these are in totally separate cities, separate meetings. Every group told me at the outset how much they loved this city, how much it meant to them to be from Baltimore, to live in Baltimore, to work in Baltimore, and to be committed to Baltimore. And so those discussions really were the genesis of what we're here announcing today. And because everyone felt the same love and connection to this city, everyone was so concerned about what they saw developing, about the mistrust that they saw and in many instances had experienced between law enforcement and the community that they serve. and they couldn't abide that breakdown, and they wanted to make things better. They were committed even then. This city was committed even then to working on this, and everyone was looking for the best way to make it happen. Now, shortly after my visit, the Justice Department launched a comprehensive investigation into the Baltimore Police Department. And that investigation allowed us to stay here in this great city and to hear the pain, the anger, and the frustration of so many community members. It allowed us to remain in touch with this great police department and talk to local police officers about where they felt their training was falling short, wasn't equipping them to handle the challenges of 21st century policing, all the things that fall on their shoulders, as well as the hardships they face on the field. And the investigation allowed us to identify specific areas where the Baltimore Police Department systems prevented it from lawfully and effectively serving the community that it is sworn to protect. And in August of 2015, we released our findings and our conclusions. And you heard what we had learned, that the Baltimore Police Department had engaged in a pattern or practice of conduct that violated the Constitution and federal law. And this conduct had eroded trust, and it had deprived the people of Baltimore of the rights and the protections guaranteed to every American. And we noted that the strains in the community trust harmed everyone who called Baltimore home, whether you live in the community, whether you serve the community, whether you patrol the community. Now, I know these were difficult findings to hear. These were difficult findings to lay upon a city that had already been through so much. But they were what our investigation found, and I have to say that no one in this city ever flinched from those findings. No one in this city ever backed away from those findings, and we were encouraged by the reception we received from the law enforcement community and from community members to those findings, as well as from the leadership of the city. And so today, I am proud to stand here with the mayor and announce that as a result of that investigation, after the thorough and good faith negotiations engaged in long and hard, all day and well into the night, that the Department of Justice and the City of Baltimore have agreed to enter into a court-enforceable consent decree to remedy the violations that we identified in our pattern or practice investigation. Now, through this agreement, we are moving forward together to work to heal the tension in the relationship between the Baltimore Police Department and the community that it serves. This agreement is robust, it is comprehensive, it includes a range of reforms to achieve our three main goals, the three main issues that emerged from our discussions, from our negotiations, from all of our time in Baltimore. First, to assure effective and constitutional policing. Second, to restore the community's trust in law enforcement. And finally, to advance public and officer safety. This agreement will help the Baltimore Police Department gain the cooperation that it needs from residents to fight and prevent crime. And most importantly, it reflects significant input from the people of Baltimore. Now, that involvement, that community involvement that's already been referenced, has been vital at every phase, from the investigation to the negotiation of this agreement, and it will continue to be critical as we implement these reforms. Because as we all know, the future of Baltimore belongs to the people of this great city, to those who wear the badge and those who seek its protection. It is all of you. It's your commitment, it's your dedication, it's your determination that have brought these reforms to the table today, and they will make the difference. They will make a difference as we seek to realize the better future that is our shared goal for this great city. Now, we are at the beginning of this process, as the mayor noted, and we have no illusions that change is easy or that it comes about overnight. We all know better. We know that it requires a great deal of work from the leadership and the officers of the Baltimore Police Department. It will also require persistent feedback. It will require input from community members, and it will require the continued leadership and engagement of leaders like Mayor Pugh and Commissioner Davis. And it will require sustained efforts from all parties, to mend, to strengthen, to solidify the trust between law enforcement and the community, because that trust is the bedrock of Baltimore's public safety. But I have to say, After having worked with this city for the past 15 months, I'm confident that we are equal to that task. And during my 21 months in office, I've learned something about the spirit of this city, of Baltimore, of all the people who call this beautiful city home. This is a city of passionate and determined people. Madam Mayor, I think you can attest to that.
I certainly can.
Determined people, and that determination is what we need to see. That passion is what we need for you to bring to this process. This is work for all of us. This is work for everyone who cares about this city and who cares about these issues. But Baltimore's also been honest with us in the discussions that we've had, the meetings that we have held, the calls that have gone back and forth. Baltimore has been very honest. You've taken a clear view of any shortcomings that we focused on, and it's a city that is also so hopeful. So hopeful. And with that hope, we can make this consent decree a reality. Because this is a city that knows what it means to work hard. It knows what it means to put your shoulder to the grindstone. And I know that Baltimore is a city that will do the hard work needed to make this consent decree a reality. Now, we have met with, we have heard from, and frankly, we've admired so many of all of you. And we are tremendously proud to be your partners on this journey toward making Baltimore a community that protects the rights, the dignity, and the safety of all of its people. And I commit to you that the Department of Justice will stand with you to ensure that the reforms of this consent decree are implemented and that our shared vision of a greater, safer, and stronger Baltimore are realized. And let me introduce an essential partner here. Vanita Gupta is the head of the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. She knows this agreement inside and out. I think she's lived every comma, every paragraph, and she's going to provide more detail about this consent decree. Certainly. So what we'll do is ask the police commissioner to speak on this issue and then turn it over to Vanita Gupta.
Thank you, and I will be brief. When I came here this morning, a couple folks noticed that I didn't have in my hands any formal remarks, and quite frankly, I didn't prepare any because Baltimore has been preparing for this moment for the last year and a half. And when the Department of Justice investigation began, we stood up a full-time unit to exclusively interact with the Department of Justice and Vanita Gupta and her remarkable staff. We opened our doors, anything they wanted, any document, any interview, any case file, any policy, any conversation they wanted to have. I'm really proud to say that the men and women of the Baltimore Police Department stood up from the rank and file on up and had those courageous conversations with the Department of Justice. So I want to thank a group of people who will absolutely benefit as much as any other group of people from this consent decree. And that group of people is the men and women of the Baltimore Police Department, the rank and file patrol officers who do this very challenging job each and every day. They will benefit tremendously from what lies in front of us. So whether it's accountability or training or technology or early intervention systems that don't exist right now, policies and procedures that reflect the latest and greatest of our profession in 2017, the cops on the street will absolutely benefit from this consent decree. And I say that all the time because there's a conversation out there from time to time whether or not a crime fight and a consent decree, a reform effort, can exist at the same time. And of course they can exist. They're not mutually exclusive. I have no doubt that when we eventually emerge from this consent decree, we will be better crime fighters and we will have greater, more respectful, trustful relationships with our community. And I'm looking forward to that process. We have not been standing still for the last year and a half, and I know the mayor mentioned that. We've made several reforms. We've addressed several areas that need to be addressed, but the consent decree gives us a path forward, a roadmap to the future, so no matter who is standing in particular positions, things can continue to get accomplished. So it's no longer a singular person who is pushing reform. So whether it's Congressman Elijah Cummings, whether it's City Council President Jack Young, or Chair of our Public Safety Committee Brandon Scott, or our own State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby, or myself or the mayor, when all of us eventually move on down the road, this process will still stand like a mountain to finally and fundamentally address some of the shortcomings that have existed in Baltimore for a really long time. So I'm looking forward to this process. I'm inviting the police officers in Baltimore to have a conversation with me tomorrow to talk about what the consent decree means to them and to hear, to continue to hear their concerns. But it's a journey that we're proud to be a part of. I too received those late night phone calls that the mayor received from a very dedicated team. And the moment I start mentioning names, I'll forget them. But on our side, on our negotiation team, Deputy Commissioner Jason Johnson, Chief Ganesha Martin, City Solicitor David Ralph, Suzanne Sangri, and so many others really fundamentally care about what public safety means in Baltimore in 2017. So what I'm looking forward to, Madam Attorney General, a year or so from now, for the remainder of the 18,000 police departments in America, when they look at Baltimore, they look at us as a place to go to figure out how we turn things around. So it's a proud day for Baltimore, and I'm just so glad to be a part of it. And I guess the next person is the one that keeps us all in check, because we need a good certainly it keeps me in check from time to time. So thank you.
It's hard to follow the commissioner, but thank you very much. Good morning, and thank you, Attorney General Lynch. But I really also want to especially thank Mayor Pugh and the commissioner for their cooperation and I think incredibly intense focus over the last days and weeks throughout this process. And before that, obviously, the prior administration. But this mayor and commissioner have really been very clear about their commitment to reform and to enhancing the Baltimore City Police Department, and I'm truly grateful, as is the Justice Department. I want to also thank the people of Baltimore, including the city's police officers, for their commitment to this process. I know this process has not always been easy, but to the hard work also that everyone is engaged in every day to ensure public safety for the people of Baltimore. And I want to thank my team from the Civil Rights Division, including Steve Rosenbaum and Tim McGatt, and the entire team for their outstanding work on this case, working with a really inspiring team at BPD and at the city for making this happen. Last August, the Justice Department announced the findings of our investigation, and we had described in that a series of systemic violations, unconstitutional stops, searches and arrests, discriminatory policing, excessive force, and retaliation against people engaging in constitutionally protected expression. These practices eroded trust, and they put the lives of officers and residents at risk. We also pledged in August that we would work together with the city and with BPD to identify the reforms that were necessary to fix the problems that we found and include those reforms in a court-enforceable, independently monitored consent decree. We listened to what community members, to what police officers, to what union leaders had to say. We read carefully the many thoughtful written submissions that we received in the course of this process. And I want to thank all of the stakeholders who shared their ideas with us. It was vitally important. We then spent months negotiating the agreement that we are here today to announce. As the Attorney General just said, the robust agreement that we are announcing includes a whole range of reforms that are designed to advance constitutional policing, to restore community trust, and to promote public and officer safety. Under the consent decree, the city and BPD will implement comprehensive reforms to end the legacy of Baltimore's zero-tolerance policing. And in its place, Baltimore is empowering its officers to engage in proactive, community-oriented policing. Through informed policies, training, and oversight, the city and BPD will ensure that officers conduct stop searches and arrests in a manner that complies with the law and promotes public safety. They will ensure that officers use appropriate de-escalation techniques and attempt to resolve incidents without use of force when possible, and use force in a manner that is proportional to the threat presented. They will transport detainees in a manner that keeps them safe. They will ensure that officers investigate sexual assault thoroughly and without gender bias. They will dispatch officers who are appropriately trained in interacting with people in crisis or with behavioral health disabilities when a police response is appropriate. They will ensure that allegations of officer misconduct are fully, fairly, and efficiently investigated, and ensure that the disciplinary system is fair, consistent, and provides due process. And in addition, the city and BPD will establish a community oversight task force, as the mayor mentioned, to recommend reforms to the current system of civilian oversight. They will ensure that officers who have the great challenging jobs every day receive the equipment and technological upgrades and guidance and support that they need to do their jobs safely and effectively. And it will ensure that BPD performs a staffing study to ensure a sufficient number of officers and supervisors. Going forward, we will need the ongoing support and engagement of this entire community, from officers to residents to city officials. This is your city, and this is your police department. As I said back in August, and as the Attorney General and the Mayor have said, real and lasting reform is not going to happen overnight. It's going to happen over time as we work together to change cultures and fix systems and reform practices. Many people in the Baltimore community have already been asking us kind of what happens next. And today, we just filed the consent decree in federal court, and together with the city and BPD are asking the court to make the settlement a court order. And when we did, both the city and the Justice Department asked the court to hold a hearing and provide an opportunity for the community to share its views on the decree. Once the court approves the decree, the next step will be to select an independent monitor to provide technical assistance to the city and BPD and assess their compliance with the decree. And we will engage in a process that is transparent and provide opportunities for public input into that process. We have come a long, long way, and let me be clear, Baltimore has not stood still during this process. Instead, BPD immediately began making improvements, and this has been, I will say, a real and engaging partnership, and I'm grateful. It's been a real and engaging partnership with all of the parties who have been bringing their ideas to the table, and with the leadership in this city, including Mayor Pugh and Commissioner Davis, with the engagement of this amazing community and with the input of Baltimore police officers and leaders, from union officials to line officers to command staff, I know the Baltimore Police Department can be a model for the rest of the nation. And I know this because we have seen it happen in other communities around the country over the last several years where we have been engaged. There's no question that this is hard work. But given our experiences in many other cities, I firmly believe that with focused, measurable, and detailed reforms, when they're implemented effectively with the kind of support and commitment by the leaders of this city and all of the committed stakeholders and community members, these reforms will restore community trust and advance officer and public safety. Thank you very much.
So we will thank you, everyone, and I want to acknowledge our state's attorney is here. There are so many groups and organizations that are represented. I won't go into all of that, but we're also here to entertain a few questions. Congressman, I know that you're going through something right now. I don't know if you want to say a few words.
I'll be very brief. Very brief. Is that all right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Let me say this. I want to thank you, Madam Mayor, and everybody who has been involved in this process. You know, one of the things that I say to my staff, Madam Mayor, every day is what can we deliver to our constituents? And this is a gift, hopefully, that will keep on giving for years and years and years. Because it gives our young people and so many others in our city and our police department an opportunity to work together to reestablish that trust that you talked about, Commissioner. And I want to thank every single person, because when we're dancing with the angels, this decree will hopefully bring that kind of trust so that our people will be able to work together. And last but not least, let me say this, that, you know, so often people spend a lot of time pitting the police against the neighborhood. I've said it many times. Our neighborhoods and our community need the police, and our police need the community. Anybody who knows anything about fighting crime knows that. And so I'm excited about this moment, and I want to thank you again, Madam Mayor, for everything you've done, and the entire team, and you, Madam Attorney General. Thank you for coming to Baltimore over and over again and saying, and on behalf of our entire federal delegation, we thank you.
Thank you. Jane?
Can I ask the Attorney General a question?
Yes, of
about
course.
the process going forward? You're in the last week of the administration, the Obama administration. So the appointment of the independent monitor will be made by whom from the Department of Justice?
So I'm actually, thank you for that question. I think process is very important here. And I'm going to have Vanita Gupta give some specifics on that as well. This has been, as we've discussed, a long and iterative process, and it will live on past this administration, because it really is for the city of Baltimore, and we know that Baltimore will pick it up and carry it forward as well. As we've mentioned, the consent decree was filed in court this morning. The next step is for the judge to order the hearing that has been discussed to allow for community input of the document itself. But I do want to just make one point about that. We want that community input because it's a continuation of the community input we've had throughout this entire process. We've all been to meetings, we've received input, letters, documents from community members, and a lot of that, frankly, so much of that fueled the negotiating phase as well. So the community input is there, but it continues, and now the formal part of it begins. Once we receive all of that input, the search for the monitor begins. And that's a process, again, that the Justice Department will continue to stay involved with. I'm going to have Vanita give you some specifics on that.
The monitor process is going to begin quite immediately. The Justice Department will be putting out a request for applications. We will have an open and transparent process, and then we will be working with the city to identify the eligible candidates from that pool. There will be an opportunity for public input into the monitor selection process. Ultimately, we will be making recommendations to a federal judge who has the consent decree, and the federal judge will have the ultimate authority to appoint the monitor. But it will be, as the Attorney General said, a vetted process and a collaborative process with the city.
Question?
Madam Attorney General, we were talking to a woman from Baltimore earlier who had lost family members to violence in the city. She's skeptical on if this reform will actually change violence in the city, on if other people won't experience what she's experienced. How would you address that skepticism?
Well, first, I would offer every sympathy for her loss. And the fact that it's shared by so many thousands of other families does not diminish it for her. Because losing any soul in a city diminishes the whole city. I think that this agreement, particularly as it focuses on providing training and equipment to the police department and making sure that they have the information and the tools that they need to both fight crime and engage the community in that process, will be helpful going forward. And I actually talked to people like this lady also who've had these grievous losses and who do want to know, is an agreement like this going to make a difference? And what I say is, when we look at other cities where we have worked on not just community trust, but also strengthening the community's participation in law enforcement and law enforcement's responsiveness to the community, we do see positive results in crime. We do see that. Now, obviously, violent crime has a host of roots. And so that's why we're also working with cities across America on those root issues as well. Firearms, drugs, the heroin opioid epidemic. We're also working with cities, including Baltimore, on those issues as well, where we can bring in federal resources, we do, where we can work with our local law enforcement partners with whom we work on all of those aforementioned issues. We also do that as well. So what I would say to that lady is, again, this consent decree is going to empower the community, and it will also strengthen the police department in their pure crime-fighting role, as well as the role that engages the community in that. And with that, we hope that we will have a reduction in crime in Baltimore, but more importantly, an increase in the participation of the community in this entire process.
Madam Attorney General, what kind of measurables are in the consent decree? What kind of measurables are in the consent decree? And Madam Mayor, how will the community task force, how will those members be appointed?
Do you want to go first? Okay. Well, with respect to the measurables, again, I will have Vanita address some of those specifics there as well. But the monitor will be working with the police department, with the community. There will be a series of requirements that the police department and city have to attain, and there will be reports given to the judge on a regular basis. Do you want to add anything to that?
We have currently in the consent decree a set of outcome measures that are used to benchmark kind of ongoing reforms and progress with meeting the terms of the consent decree. Once a monitor is put in place, the monitor will also work with the police department, the city, and the Justice Department to further elaborate on those outcome measures and produce reports. These reports from the monitor will be public, so all of the community in Baltimore will have access to those reports to assess and understand the progress that is being made along the terms of the consent decree.
There actually is an outline as to how people are to apply, because it will be an open process where individuals across the city can apply to be a part of that task force. We do want to make sure that it's geographically represented. It's not a large task force, but we want geographically, and we want it to be inclusive of the entire community. And as soon as we get all of that information, you'll see everything will be online and available, and we'll probably announce that process as well.
With the new administration coming in next week, what power, as the Attorney General, what power will the new Attorney General have to undo the work that you've done?
Well, I think what we're seeing today is an example of, frankly, the ongoing relationships that the department has forged over the course of several years and several administrations with cities and police departments in these situations. This agreement will live on. It is court enforceable. There will be an independent monitor, and it will live on as a document of the court and as a binding agreement between the city and the Department of Justice. We also have obligations under this consent decree as well in terms of information, training, and materials that we are to provide to help the city and the police department as well. And so this agreement is binding, and it will live on.
I think you should also mention that everybody assumes, because you're leaving, that everybody at the Justice Department is leaving. But
So not the case.
So not the case. And many of the members that are on the negotiating team remain as well. Am I correct?
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Thank you.
I think it's a question, please.
Madam Mayor, how long do you suspect it will take to reform the Baltimore Police Department?
Well, let me just say that there is a review process in place. I know that after 2 years, we take a look at where we are, and then again in 5 years where we are. I think what the Attorney General has said, and even the Commissioner and our Congressman, this is not an overnight process, but that's why community engagement is important. But again, the technology and all the tools that are necessary will be made available. And that's why I mentioned earlier the conversation that I had with my congressional delegation is important, because we didn't look at this from a cost perspective, but we realize that we need additional resources. And I can tell you that we've gotten phone calls from foundations at just reaching out. The other day, I got a commitment from the Ford Foundation, I believe it is, for $1 million for this particular activity. So we know that resources are going to be made available to us, and we hope that in this effort that we become the model. I mean, that's our goal, to become the model in the nation.
How much is going to cost the city in terms of expenditures to implement these reforms?
Well, let me just say, a lot of this is around training and technology, but also setting up the monitor. We do have an idea what that piece is going to cost, but we're still looking at the technology. We want the best. And again, as I said to the congressional delegation, I'm not interested right now in what that price tag is. I'm more interested that we get the reform tools, mechanism, and process in place.
Commissioner Davis, you have a hot team set up for the homeless community. How do you plan on engaging some of the grassroots community to be a part of that with the homeless individuals in certain cabins? How do you plan to implement into that degree?
So I'm glad you mentioned our hot team, our homeless outreach team. We stood them up a couple months ago, and there are 3 officers who are dedicated full-time to reaching out and helping people. And the connections that they've made with families and other city and government services has been amazing. It's amazing what 3 dedicated people with the capacity for humanism can do. And these 3 officers have been featured in the local media, and I'm so proud of their work. And that's the type of work we need to duplicate throughout the city with any group of folks, quite frankly. I met the other day with my LGBT community, a committee I meet with them monthly. So it's important for us to reach out to not only underserved communities, but to groups who feel disenfranchised from law enforcement. And we're committed to doing just that, and in fact, we are doing just that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Madam Mayor, you said you have an idea what the training and technology improvements will cost. Can you share that?
No, I'm not quite sure. I've seen costs that can go between 9, 13, 30. I mean, we don't know exactly what that cost is going to be. But here's what we do know. We're committed to doing whatever it takes at this stage of the game. I mean, this is community input. This is what the community wants, and so we're engaged What we don't have, we'll go after it, whether it's the private sector, the public sector, the philanthropic community. That is not my concern. We will go get what we need.
Is there any obligation from the federal government to,
Well, as I said, I had a conversation with our federal leaders, and they are ready to sit down with us as soon as we get those numbers together to help us. I even had a conversation with the governor briefly on yesterday, and he's looking forward to hearing from us as well. Yes.
What kind of challenges, if any, has the police union posed in these negotiations?
Well, I think we're in negotiations with the police, with the FOP. Well, I've asked the FOP to come back to the table. I don't think they've been at the table since October. And as I met with the FOP just a few days ago, I said our conversations ought to be with each other. I'm interested in getting them back to the table as quickly as possible, because this is really about all of it. You know, this is not about union or what. This is about the individuals who we hire to protect and serve. What I have said, and I think you all have heard me say this over and over again, that we need civilians on our trial boards. And this particular document supports that, but it has to be done legally. We know that this is a part of their negotiation, so that's a conversation that we still have to have. Yes.
Just on the, it was very important for us throughout this process, both in the course of the investigation as well as in the development of the reforms that are embedded in the consent decree, that we heard from the police unions in Baltimore as well, that submitted recommendations for reform, because they too are invested in the best police department that is possible for the city of Baltimore. And so I think that that was a very important kind of set of input that we got as we were engaging in this process.
Could you address the treatment of women in the consent decree? We heard from somebody this morning at the Board of Estimates meeting about a woman who was sexually assaulted by a police officer. I know there was a lot of information in the DOJ report about the treatment of women. Can you talk about what is built into this consent decree to address issues of police officers and
Yeah, there is a whole section on sexual assault, and I'll refer to our expert.
So just very briefly, the consent decree advances policy, training, and supervision and oversight of sexual assault investigations to promote a victim-centered, trauma-informed approach and to combat gender bias, and to ensure that victims of sexual assault are appropriately treated during the course of investigations, as well as that there's full and thorough investigations that can lead to successful prosecutions where that is called for.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was great.